All right. So fucking Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to talk about here, and fair warning, spoilers of some kind.
I should probably put that in the
Uh,
title, eh?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So as far as I can tell, I'd probably call myself one of the most knowledgeable people about Cyberpunk in the world right now.
Damn.
Because I've crammed about 50 hours of the game in the past 6 days, um, since it's been released.
Damn. That's a lot. Yeah.
And have finished most of the game. I've like some side quest shit that was just really boring that I couldn't bother doing, but most of it I've done. Um, there's a lot to talk about, like a lot.
Where do you want to start?
Okay, so let's start on the overall game. Is it a good game? No, it's a bad game. It's a bad game for a huge amount of reasons, covering the fact that the game is. I mean, obviously, you probably know the most of the basic stuff. It's incredibly buggy. It's a nightmare to play through the game. Like you'll deal with crashes and like game breaking stuff all the time. The combat is incredibly not fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the combat's dog shit.
The combat is it's really really bad.
It feels like playing Skyrim, to be honest. Like honestly, it has like a very similar combat flow to Skyrim, which just also I do not have a high opinion of Skyrim's combat. Just FYI, everybody.
Yeah, and all the bugs that I found in it, and there have been many over the course of the 50 hours that I've played.
Mm-hmm.
But all the bugs I found in it reminded me an awful lot about. Quite a few of them reminded me of playing Baldur's Gate 3, which is an early access game that's been released a year before it's actually been released, which has one of them like there's a bunch of like stuff there that's not bugs because they just haven't released a full game yet. Like it's a semi game they've released.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the major ones was when people talk, they talk but their mouths don't move. They're just sitting there, their mouths closed, and the voices coming out, which actually ended up getting fixed in the recent Baldur's Gate patch, not fixed in the release of Cyberpunk. Still, just completely left in.
And nobody's saying that that the Baldur's Gate 3 is finished yet. Which they are saying about
it's an early access game. Yeah, it's specifically being talked about. Like it's only literally the first act. Like there's no like extra stuff on there. Like it is just a preliminary experience of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But like, and there's the combat is a mess. If not just for like the main reasons of it not being fun. Because I play a lot of games, most of which have terrible combat mechanics. Point an example, all of the Elder Scrolls games, the Assassin's Creed games, which are eventually you reach a point where you're like, there's like one combo that works well. I'm just going to spam that for the next 40 hours, and that was kind of the way it works. And that's similar to Cyberpunk in that I kind of just found two weapons that did the most damage, and I just spammed those in the most uncomplicated way to get through missions.
Yeah, they definitely shuttle you down that way.
Yeah, and this was me even picking what was ostensibly the coolest option, which was the katanas and mantis blades, which was designed to. I mean, that visually it's the coolest looking ones, especially because the mantis blades actually change how your arms look and raise. Admittedly, some questions about like, hey, if you have the mantis blades and say you're like patting someone on the back, what happens if you accidentally think mantis blades? Do your mantis blades come out and kill someone? Like, can you accidentally murder people because you now have like blade? Your arms are basically 70% blade. I was thinking like they just appear when you want them to appear. So like, is it like a situation of you have to be like think really hard about like having the mantis blades? Because like if you are someone who's like impulsive, like thoughts, and like has unwanted thoughts, and those thoughts could be, what if I accidentally stab someone with mantis blade right now? Would your mantis blades come out and stab someone?
Yeah, I mean, intrusive thoughts are definitely a problem in the future. I mean, that doesn't go away. Come on.
So that was one of the for about sort of 5 hours. That was probably one of the thoughts that I kept having whenever I brought my mantis blades out. I was like, and because you can see like all the marks on your arms, like where they've been installed. Because like when you have you done Mantis blades in the game yet?
No.
Because it fully, like, your entire arm just rips open and this blade comes out. Like your arm is completely mechanical at that point. Like there's basically like no like actual like physical arm left.
No more arm meat.
Yeah, there's no more arm meat. It's all mechanical and blades in there. And like it cut, and you look at it, and while it's doing cutscenes, and you can see your hands like with the marks. You're like, man, it'd be really bad if I accidentally just mantis bladed right now. This would be terrible. So like that was, and I'll admit that probably occupied my mind because I was so bored. But like, or I was just trying to get through missions to get to the end, because it did sort of hit that grind point where I did just kind of need to get to the end of the game.
Yeah, yes, that happens with so many games, right?
Yeah.
Especially, if you're not enjoying every part of the experience too, it just becomes a fucking chore.
Yeah. And so there's the other things that were also bad in the game is it's the same problem that I see with basically every, and this I covered this in a little bit in my open world video. It has the same problem that all open world videos have, all video games have, which is they promise a huge amount and then the actual game doesn't deliver at all on that front. And like they did the exact same fucking thing. Like it was literally word for word exactly what fucking what's his name did. Fable, head of the Fable studio.
I don't know.
What was it? It's like my brain goes Peter Molyneux.
Okay.
My brain always goes to Stefan Molyneux, but it's not Stefan Molyneux. It's Peter Molyneux.
The slightly less problematic Molyneux.
But like Peter Molyneux, like pre-Fable, he promised the whole big thing of like, in Fable you'd be able to plant a tree, and then over the course of like your game you'd be able to see that tree grow up. And it was like everyone's like, is this hyperbolic or is this like actual like do you mean this is actually what happened? The game's like, no, the game is like this intricate. Like you can like you form like these like relationships with people that you see grow up and everything, and like you have these massive like social like dynamics and stuff. And then the actual game came out, and it was like none of that. Like it was the most basic level like interaction-y stuff whatsoever. Because of course it was. We're talking a 2003 game on the Xbox, like the OG. Like was it an OG Xbox? No, it was Xbox 360, I think. Like, of course, it was never going to live up to that hype because it physically couldn't live up to that hype.
Yeah.
But that was a consistent theme of open world games, is they promise this huge possibilities, but game engines means that it's physically impossible for them to do that. And that's the same thing that you see with Cyberpunk2077. They said, hey, like you'll be able to explore the world and you'll be able to see you'll be able to, like these every single NPC in the game will have their own individual lives that they'll go through, and you could follow them if you want to, which is exactly what they said for GTA 5 too. And in reality, though they don't, they have like 2 or 3 things that they operate through, and actually the NPCs zone in as you get close to them and zone out when you walk away from them. Like you like they don't exist when you're not like around.
Yeah, that's
because of course they can't. The engine's already struggling enough to run the game as it is. Like it would die if you tried to do anything more intensive. So, so the world does have that sort of like the same kind of open world problem where they promised a lot of like possibilities, but in reality, there's just not that. Which if they just don't promise it. If you can't do it, don't promise that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, we've already.
It's gonna look silly.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit when in chat, but like, that was definitely a problem with kind of the gender expression stuff that was expected in the game. That they were going to kind of give you options, right? To where instead of options, they gave you. I'm sure y'all have seen. But we have a question in chat. Well, I mean, I guess not quite a question, but like when it comes to transphobia in the game, like how bad is it?
Okay, so, and this was a lot of things, because I've obviously had to be dealing with a lot of comments from gamers, specifically most of them lying about what the game is. Stuff like how so your voice decides what your gender is in the game.
So
basically.
funny. Yeah.
So regardless of what body type you choose or whatever, your voice will ultimately decide exactly how people refer to you and what pronouns they use. And when people say, "Oh, the pronouns you never seem to come up," that's a complete fucking lie. You get referred to by pronouns basically about once every 2 or 3 dialogue lines. Like, it comes up as much as it would in normal conversations, which is an awful lot. So, you are going to notice it. And it also, yet again, falls into the same kind of problem where even if you headcanon it as a situation of, okay, so I've made my female character who's going off with a female voice, so they're a woman, even though that's kind of ridiculous that the female voice is the only thing that ties them to being a woman, and if they have a male voice, then they're now a man apparently. So that's whatever, by the by, I guess. And let's say, I've actually wanted to be real bit. I wanted to go out there a little bit, and you know what? They've got their pre-op. They got a dick. Okay. Let's say you've done all that. It's the same issue with almost all of these games where you can technically headcanon that they're trans. It doesn't actually matter because it's all headcanon. You can't actually make your character trans. They don't actually have any sort of backstory linkage of being trans. They won't ever think of stuff or look at stuff or discuss things in a way that makes them a trans person. They're effectively, if they are a trans person, they're a trans person who is completely not in any way, shape, or form representing that. So you don't get to actually experience being a trans character. You're just headcanoning that your character who could be trans is trans, which isn't quite the same thing.
No.
Right? It's the problem that I have with all these things where it's easy where a lot of people say, oh, so what, you want the trans people to be obvious? You want the trans people to be they have to come out and put on a trans flag and be like, oh, I'm a trans person, look at me, dancy kind of thing, like a minstrel show or whatever. I'm like, no, that's obviously not what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say just that a trans person would have a different view on certain aspects and certain things than a cis person would. And it's weird not to see that ever represented or ever discussed.
Yeah. I mean, considering the amount of work that they would have to do to actually do that, it wasn't going to happen. That's the sad truth of this, right? Is that unless they were going to invest in creating a story specifically about a trans person, you wouldn't be able to go and then have the story be about a cis person just at a whim, right? It's not just gender isn't just window dressing.
Sure, it would require a lot of effort.
Yeah,
but in the same way that I think where I would when I think of other games say Dragon Age or whatever, right? Dragon Age Inquisition, where you can play as you can select a background that basically is defined by often the race that you choose. I don't see there being any reason why you couldn't, if you're making a character backstory and someone wanted to really make a game that's intricate with this kind of details, why there couldn't be options to have that kind of stuff thrown in there. You could feasibly throw, and it's the same, and obviously the same kind of thing goes a little bit for if we talk about the ability to have your character customized to be a particular race or whatnot, right? Yeah, sure, you can make your character look like a black person, or you can make your character look like a Hispanic person, but they never ever in conversations say anything that would indicate that they're intimate with those cultures.
Oh, absolutely.
If you make so it's a visual ability for you to represent yourself in the game without actually really having any intimate relationship with that culture. Because that would be considered to be hard to put in there, but because you come into a relationship with what is commonly a minority culture, what you end up being is a bland every person who's kind of dull, which is to some degree why I'm not massively a fan of those kind of custom created games. I like a custom created game where you do have more control of your backstory that does have an impact on your character, which is yet again the same thing for why I'd probably say that the best game ever made is Dungeons and Dragons, and nothing else is going to be able to compete with Dungeons and Dragons, because every criticism you can have for video games is fixed by what D&D is.
Yeah, because you can be so creative.
You can do all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the world is created by someone who can react intimately with the details that you put on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because of which, I mean, ultimately, I'm sure eventually at some point we might get to a point where you can have advanced enough like AI and whatnot that it could do the similar job to a DM. Where it could be flexible enough, what's it called, the AI that can it's not evolve, it's like adaptable, or it can learning, the self-learning stuff, where it can learn as it goes, sort of thing. Like, you could have an AI in a game that could do that eventually at some point, presumably. But like,
and also, I mean, you were talking about TTRPGs, right? Not specifically D&D, just kind of like TTRPGs.
Sure, just general TTRPGs, yeah. It's sort of any TTRPG where ultimately the person who controls the setting is an actual person who has the ability to interact with whatever choices you make or whatever characters you create. Like, that is ultimately a level of actual character customization and character backstory that no video game is ever going to match. Which is why I do sort of think ultimately that these kind of custom character games maybe actually end up being weaker than games where they just explicitly tell you who you are. Like, you were explicitly given a character, because if you're explicitly given a singular character, they can do a lot more work making that character feel like a person.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is
because they know who they are.
This is like a pretty traditional storytelling thing, right? Is when you're doing storytelling, you can either do storytelling from like a fixed position where it's like you've got this story that is, that has a path that you've laid out, that has like a well fleshed out character, or you could do the player or viewer insert kind of thing, which is like what they've done there, or in Skyrim, or many other games where you have no real depth as a character yourself. The depth is outside of you, if there is any. And yeah, it is a choice, but then trying to engage with a political or any sort of social identity in that character that is obligated to be, by cumization, it is obligated that character is hollow. So you can fill yourself into it. That's doomed to fail, and I think that really showed in this game, right?
Yeah, and it's not, and I said it's not like this isn't a thing that CD Projekt Red don't know about. I mean, we literally can refer to the last game they did, which is Witcher 3, which was a really, really, really good game. And I really, really enjoyed it. Yes, going in as someone who initially avoided it because I didn't like the premise of it, and I didn't like all the stuff that I kind of heard about it. Actually ended up playing it, I was like, oh, this is actually really, really good. The main character is interesting, and also where initially, and I've been working on a video for this, but I don't know if it's ever going to get released, but I was interested by the fact that Geralt of Rivia is on the initial surface level, he looks like, the classic toxic masculine role model, whatever, toxic masculine character of like, a serious monster slayer who has no emotions and just kills things, and that's his whole life is being a badass and everything. But in reality, that's all that is a surface level story that they spread about themselves. I mean, the Witchers are incredibly, they have emotions, they have personal connections. It's just that they're not so open about it, or not so obvious about their emotions. And he's generally, in the games that you play, he's a really caring person who does put a lot of time and effort into trying to do good things and not be an asshole in like a positive way. In that, like, Geralt of Rivia is probably a good example of a positive role model for masculine role model, which was an interesting thing to go into the game. It was like, okay, so I know that given a setting and given this kind of thing, that they can write a good game.
They have done it.
It's just haven't done it, and this is where it comes into play yet again. That while Cyberpunk 2077 is a bad game overall, there are good things in there. And mostly the best thing about Cyberpunk 27 is the side characters. The stories of the side characters and the way that ends up having an impact on the end of the game is really well done, and they're really interesting. And I think they're probably the most engaging thing about the entire game. Like, don't rush to the end without doing like the Pan Am sideline, the Judy Alvarez side story, the Kerry, Eurodyne, the Rogue stuff. Like, don't rush them about doing all of those, all of their like side missions and shit, because otherwise you're going to end up with a game that's going to feel really hollow because it only really gets filled out by those characters existing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, by developing... Oh! Yeah, well, thanks for gifting a sub to Gushin. I appreciate it. I mean, to Lily. There we go. Yeah, it's... I mean, that's... How do you feel about that same thing with, like, the Dragon Age games? Like...
where the game is kind of bad, but it's made up for by the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, that is sort of BioWare's whole shtick, generally speaking. Game itself is actually kind of shit, but the characters make up for it. And it's honestly pretty accurate. I think that the weakest thing, the weakest way in which CD Projekt Red doesn't quite exactly match up to Dragon Age or match up to Byron's levels is the amount of detail put into fleshing out the world. And that was probably one of the big things that I really got upset about with playing Cyberpunk 27 over time, was that the world really didn't feel like that big of fleshed out. Like, the amount of detail that I got from the story and from playing 50 hours of the game, like, if you ask me to like start detailing like the intricacies of the Dragon Age world or the intricacies of the Mass Effect world, I could go on for fucking a day, 2 days tops, of like all of the interesting stuff in there. Whereas with Cyberpunk 27, I've got so little information really to discuss. There is so little actual effort put into the world that it is quite bland. And it's not even like, in the sense, I mean, one of the few corporations that we actually have any information on, much information at all, is the Arasaka Corporation, and even then we have kind of not that much. Like, we know a little bit about them, but what we know could feel like maybe a paragraph from the entire thing. And that's where the flaws come in, is that all of the characters, as great as the characters are, none of them really help to flesh out this amazing world that there could be, or that you either from reading the Cyberpunk 2020 setting, that there is there and that does exist.
Absolutely.
And that's that's a shame, because it's not something, it's not a thing where I don't think CD Projekt Red doesn't know how to do it, because they have done it. They did it with Witcher. Witcher 3 does a good job of fleshing out the world, does a good job of giving you information on the world and the way things work through the characters that you interact with. But not so much in Cyberpunk 27. And we could talk about that, because, and when we talk, and to bring it back a little bit here to the trans thing, talking about the trans character. So there is a trans character, Claire, who does turn up from the side missions. That they're the bartender for Afterlife, and you also help them by doing all the rides in the game, which there are 4 of. It's not that many, which is actually good, because driving in the game is shit. It's terrible.
It's very bad.
It's probably some of the worst driving I've ever had. So it's probably a good thing they didn't really focus too much on driving mechanics. But So what we learned from her about the whole whatever being trans is, because she's the one who's Beast, the car she drives, has trans flags on it, trans flag on the back and trans flag inside the cabin. But she briefly mentions as like an offhand comment that her husband was really supportive and came to visit her in the hospital after her gender transition with flowers, and that's it. And that is the only piece of information we get through the entire game about trans people.
That's it?
That's all. The only thing that I can tell you with any sort of consistency is that there is a trans model who is a famous person because of their linkage to Chromantical, which is the drink ad, who is presumably a trans model. I actually don't know if they're trans. They could just be a woman who's got an artificial dick. I have no idea because they don't get mentioned. They don't get mentioned, or they're just on an advertisement, and no one discusses it ever. But the only piece of information I know about being trans in the world is that gender transitions, gender surgery happens. I don't know if it's well accepted. I don't know if it's something that happens a lot. There's no mention of non-binary people. There's no mention of any gender stuff aside from that. That's literally it. So it's kind of like that's the entirety of my understanding about what being trans in Cyberpunk is. It's that one piece of information. Well, there's two pieces of information. That's it.
Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah, that's just nothing.
And we can compare that to other games. If we're yet again, for example, the Dragon Age series. From talking to Krem, who is the lieutenant for Iron Bull and his troop. From talking to Krem, you can get some discussions from both her and from Iron Bull about exactly how the Canary and how the Tevinter react to the whole transgender thing. There's the ability to have deeper conversations that sort of expand the way that you understand that, like, how those cultures react to the idea of trans people. And it's admittedly not great. None of the cultures that react well to trans people, but at least you learn something about those kind of interactions, about the way that people sort of see that, or the way that people are visibly engaged with that kind of thing, in a way that, for a character who gets a bunch of side missions, should be better expanded on. Like it's the same. If it's the same way that if you have a gay character, them being gay will come up at least once if you spend 4 hours doing missions for them. So that part of them, which is why the whole thing with like Claire, because of course, as soon as I saw that it was a trans person, I was like, okay, well, I've got to do all these. I have to do all these missions then, don't I? And then I got like Sweet Jack from like putting all my time into that and time and effort into that. And it's disappointing to say the least. That was so poorly explored, because like I said, it is a consistent theme that the game world of Cyberpunk is underutilized. That it is, and I think watching the credits, I saw that like for the people that they had who were writing it, it was like it was 2 primary writers and then like 3 like side writers. And I was like, that's actually quite low for a game like this.
Yeah.
Like generally, when it comes to like these kind of like writing, like these games which are normally very heavily like role play and like lore dependent, you'll normally have like one supervising like writer, but you'll have like a team of like 20 or like 15 like writers who like will do all like the lore stuff in the game. I mean, I think Skyrim was like 8 people all up.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that still sounds low if you're trying to make a really like fleshed out world. But
I think most of the time was spent writing the books, honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But like, I mean, it's and this is obviously, if I was going to make a video on Cyberpunk2077, I would have to make it in comparison to the only other game that I can think of as being close to equivalent to it, which would actually, now thinking about talking about it here, I'd probably do the two comparisons, which would be, the first one would be a comparison to Dragon Age. And the second would be obviously a comparison to Disco Elysium.
Interesting. I mean, no, I want to. How do you grok Disco Elysium as being similar to Cyberpunk 2077?
So when I was playing Disco Elysium, and I was playing Cyberpunk, the message that I got from both of them, the core concept behind both of them, is the idea of how do characters exist, how do people survive, how do people, get by in their day-to-day lives in the face of dystopia.
Okay.
And not just dystopia, but dystopia that is heavily involved in capitalism. And the core conceit of both is dystopian capitalism is the overarching setting to which everything is put to. But whereas Cyberpunk's commentary on dystopian capitalism reminded me a lot of GTA, actually, probably. Where GTA 5 is like the whole dystopian capitalism, or the commentary on capitalism of GTA 5 is, here's a bunch of, really insensitive or like really, really stupid advertisements. And also here's a bunch of missions that kind of mock the whole like, isn't capitalism stupid and silly sort of thing. So it's all very surface level, it's all very surface level commentary on capitalism, but not really like, doesn't really dive too deep into like what does that actually mean for people? Like what does that actually, like how does that actually affect their lives?
Yeah, I would agree that it's definitely surface level. The tone's a lot different, at least as far as I've gotten so far. But that may change. I am not far in the game at all. So does it get really silly at points?
I would say the advertisements are very silly. I'd say all the advertisements in Cyberpunk 27, like if you notice all the background advertisements, they're all very, very silly, and they're all, they're all incredibly sexualized. In the same way that, but then this is another thing that people commented a lot. They were saying, it's stupid to say, this is the one piece of trans representation that we have in like consistency in the world because it's sexualized, because everything's sexualized in the game. Like, yeah, but the problem with that is, firstly, this is like the only real trans thing we see in the world, and it's the only thing we see in the trans world, in the world that is trans is sexualized. Whereas while there are plenty of like women or dudes that are sexualized in the world, there are also plenty of women and dudes who aren't sexualized. So you get a sense of both sides of that kind of thing. You actually get to see, you get to see a diverse representation of those people and their identities, whereas with trans people we just don't get that. Which is where that kind of falls apart. But also the idea of dystopian capitalism is never really dug deeply into by Cyberpunk 27 at all. And not like in, like I said, the silly element is mostly the ads. In the same way that like GTA doesn't really dig into it at all, they all kind of say, look how capitalism is bad, but they don't really dive into what that means or how that operates. And it reminds me honestly a lot of, so Johnny Silverhand, who is the Keanu Reeves, who is the Keanu Reeves of the game.
Yeah, the real life Keanu Reeves of Night City.
But his whole thing is, capitalism sucks, the corporations suck, everything is terrible, it all needs to be destroyed or burned down, which is his entire interpretation of capitalism. Like it's very, very surface level of just, it bad, destroy it. Which is sort of his whole deal.
EOL, thank you for gifting a sub to Blood and Donuts. I appreciate it, bud.
And it doesn't inspire more commentary from your characters. It doesn't inspire more introspection from the characters around you. There's no great discussions about that or any sort of deep thinking about what any of that means. Whereas in Disco Elysium, there's a huge amount of focus on that. There is a massive amount of time and effort put into exactly how does existing in this world affect not just your character but every character that you meet. Like what is their, and how does all that link back to like these specific like events that you might know about, that you might not know about, but like you can find out about from your experience in it. And it's, as I said, it does kind of keep falling back on the same sort of the same concern that I have with Cyberpunk 2077, which is that it is just a very surface level game. That they didn't really bother digging in deeply into any of the topics or any of the issues they were covering. That they didn't spend a lot of time trying to give an intricate level of intrigue and mystery and discussion behind any of the topics that they bring up. And it's worrying because I feel like people are focusing way too much on all the buggy stuff about Cyberpunk 2077 without focusing too much on like the fact that the game itself is not a good game. Like even if the game wasn't a buggy mess, it still wouldn't be a very good game. Like it still wouldn't be very interesting, and it still wouldn't be very intriguing with the world that it's created.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of promises made about things that were going to be in the game, right? Like if you understood what Cyberpunk is before Cyberpunk 2077 came out, you know, you had like a set of things that you were going to expect from this game. And then on top of that, the specific talk about you know, trans representation in the game, using that to get headlines and all that, and then completely cutting it out of the game. Like there was just a lot of, this game has been a kind of a supreme disappointment. A big oversell, just like you were talking about with Peter Molyneux. But this time it's CD Projekt Red doing that, overselling and under providing, right?
Yeah, and it is one of the things where there's so much opportunity for discussion, and you keep seeing those opportunities. It is one of those. It's one of those sort of games where it's the most depressing because I keep consistently seeing missed opportunities to do things in the game. I keep seeing failed possibilities or failed ways that you could explore deeper some topics in the game, because they just kind of go, okay, so this is a thing that happens, we're just going to skirt on right past that, you know, bloop, just go right on by. Like for example, there's the Kerry Eurodyne mission, one of the Kerry Eurodyne missions where the Kerry Eurodyne stuff has a lot to explore. So he's Johnny Silverhand's old bandmate from Samurai, who ended up becoming really successful on his own solo career. But he's like a rock gatekeeper, and he like hates like electro music, and he hates like all the new wave stuff because it's not real rock and it's destroying rock, and they're all corporate sellouts, and like him, a person who sold out to corporations as well. This is kind of hypocritical, but like his missions end up having you like attack this Japanese band, and you attack them because they're trying to they want to do a cover of one of his songs, and he didn't give them permission to do it. Which, as you know, is the real anarchist is getting pissy about someone covering your song.
Very anarchist.
The real anarchist.
Extreme anarchist right here.
And then he ends up finding out that like they'd got the rights to the song because his manager had gone behind his back and sold him out and sold his like rights away for him. And it's like, oh, so he finds out actually like he did end up screwing himself up by selling himself to the corporations because now they own the rights to all of his songs and stuff. I'm like, we going to explore this any deeper? No. Okay, cool. We're just moving right past that. Never mind. All good. Nope, we're just skipping right past that. But then, like, the other thing that also comes up is when you finally meet the I forgot the band. Taken off. It's the Japanese background. What the hell the name is? It's like a trio of like electro pop kind of artists, but like, they're like in like all the advertisements for themselves and like all the stuff. They have like the most like over the top like Japanese voices, right? Like they pepper half the statements with like Japanese. They speak in like broken English. They have like the like incredible like like the anime like Japanese girl voice on. And then when you actually meet them backstage and you talk to them in like a setting away from the public and the media, they just have like normal like American voices because they all learned English and they all know how to speak. They're all actually Japanese American. They're not actually Japanese. But does that ever get mentioned? Do you get to ask them about that? Like, no. That was the thing that I noticed myself and went, oh, that's strange that happens. And nobody mentions it.
It's just and like leveraging.
There is no discussion about it at all. As like, hey, like your voices are completely fucking different. And I'm like, it's there. It's a thing that exists. I'm like, okay, so maybe it's like a subtle thing, but also it's a subtle thing and it doesn't get talked about at all. And also, like, unless every Japanese person in the game is doing the exact same thing where they're all putting on like a fake Japanese voice, most of them have like really like weird Japanese accents for people who are like Japanese Americans. Like it's better people than I have covered how there's like really weird Japanese representation in this game.
Yeah. I mean, it is very strange. Absolutely.
But it is noticeable in like that sort of aspect where it's like, oh, this all feels like really like a tourism version of Japanese culture. Which yet again, this is why I feel like the setting of cyberpunk capitalist dystopia is not being used by them as a stepping stone, as a foundation for building an interesting perspective, as much as it is being used by them as a excuse against all criticism. Like people will say, oh, well, like, there's all the Japanese culture is done weirdly because of capitalism. It's capitalist, it's the corporations and markets and stuff. They're doing it. Like, that's the real, like, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. If that's true, then why does nobody talk about it in the game?
Yeah, nobody criticizes this. Everybody's hates fucking corpos. They're always talking about how the fucking corpos suck. You can smell them a mile away. But then, it's you never talk about what they do wrong. You never talk about what it is that's actually happening, that's like destroying communities, that's like devaluing culture. No, none of that gets talked about. It is very hollow. Absolutely.
It is inserted in there, and it's inserted in there as if them just putting it into the game is enough by itself. That the very existence of it is a commentary alone. And they don't need to do any more work. And if you ever kind of go, well, okay, so what's this all about? They'll just go, oh, well, it's capitalism is exploits things. It's bad, right? Capitalism is bad. This is exploiting something. That's bad. And you're like, yeah, but that's like the most surface level possible interpretation of that. Like, do you want to talk about why that is? Do you want to have characters in the game discuss like this? Do you want to have characters in the game talk about like how ridiculous this is? No. Okay, so then what was the point? Like.
Why even bring it up then? Yeah, it's not about having a discussion about it. It's just about using the aesthetics of it, the aesthetics of anti-capitalism, and the aesthetics of like a scary corporate feudal future that has really that's all it is. And it's important to realize that when you're going into the game. Yeah,
and that would be why my comparison would be to Disco Elysium, a game which does do an awful lot with its exploration of capitalist dystopia, to the point where the atmosphere is capable enough to make the setting feel more alive than Cyberpunk 2077 does. Cyberpunk 2077 has this massive, awesome visual that does more effort, but Disco Elysium doesn't need that massive visual setting. You get like the story is so oppressively overwhelming in the way that the ideas are consistently there, consistently reinforced. Also, the music is really, really good, and the music in Cyberpunk 2077 is just really poorly chosen.
It really is. I was like, there were a couple choices that I thought turned out pretty good, but it was not many. This is actually something we had a whole stream about. Blood and Donuts and Zotz and I were hanging out talking about this, and a lot of the choices, like the Refused, just what a fucking awful choice. If you're talking about like a future where, like, you know, you look at what goes on during like an economic depression, which is, you know, kind of where the world just seems to be permanently stuck in the cyberpunk setting. And you have, like, people want to listen to like really positive music, and so there's some of that. But like, you don't, like, where does the Refused fit into all of this, right? It's just like a guitar band replicating sounds from in 2077, 100 years ago, and or maybe a little less than 100 years ago, but not much less.
Well, I mean, in the game, it is made it's made clear that it is weird because it's said consistently by all the people in the game that Samurai is a dead band, that no one cares about them, and yet in Night City there's Samurai posters fucking everywhere. 60% of the people are wearing Samurai fucking t-shirts and shit. And also there's a whole radio station basically dedicated to purely Samurai / the Refused. I'm like, okay, how dead is this band? Because this is like the dead in the same way that if you like claimed that like in 2020 fucking Drake was dead or something, like, I don't know if that's true. Like, it seems to be just as popular as he's always been. He kind of seems to be everywhere.
Also, Gemma brings up a pretty good point here, that you're forced to buy into the accumulation of wealth and capitalism in the game, right? You're kind of forced to become a capitalist, even though you're criticizing, you're criticizing corpos, but you are ultimately a merc out to go and capitalize as much as you can on anything you can. I don't know. It is definitely a good criticism to make.
Yeah. There's two things I would say though. The first one would be talking a bit more about the music thing, but with music, one of like the big things that I always look at with music is music should lend itself to reinforcing the setting, and should be a situation where like a music for a particular thing not only makes you, or it not always comes back to your mind every time you think about that, but also it is reinforcing the themes of the story, which doesn't really happen in Cyberpunk 2077. They don't really utilize the songs well at all. Like there's the basic like sort of electro song they kind of use whenever there's about like a situation starts happening. They kind of just like have like a song start playing where that sort of happens, but it's like not consistent enough to like really reinforce it. Like if I had to like go on my brain, okay, like what's a song that happens like that I can think of a lot, and it's okay, there isn't really one. Like even like when I'm driving, I can't think of a single song, a driving song that really stuck in my mind. Which is kind of crazy for a song that's like 50% focused about you having a dude from a band stuck in your brain.
Can't even get a sticky song from the band that you half of you was in the game. That's like, so believable.
I think like other like things that like really, so like, and it doesn't always have to be like your own kind of songs. I mean, example like other songs that like stick in your head as like a big thing is Saints Row 2. The Saints Row 2 soundtrack playlist, one of the big songs that consistently keeps coming up is Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears of Fears. And that song, driving down the highway in Saints Row 2, is a really, really catchy song, but also the whole theme of Everybody Wants to Rule the World does kind of match the story of Saints Row 2, which is about taking over this corporatized landscape and trying to get to the top by, and ultimately you kind of end up selling out a little bit as you do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's and in reference to Disco Elysium, which would be the one I talk about more. Disco Elysium soundtrack is incredible. Even right now, just thinking about it, and like the last time I played Disco Elysium must have been like 7 months ago or 6 months ago, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can already start hearing the diner music coming to my head. The
Mm-hmm.
music that plays as soon as you leave your bedroom in the like hotel.
Mm-hmm.
The day music for that just
Yeah.
immediately comes back to my head, and like the way it's like such like a somber tune. Like it's got like a little bit do 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 like that little like high bit to it, but it's like a relatively like mellow tune.
Yeah, I mean that's the atmosphere for not Cyberpunk, for Disco Elysium. They really nail it with the music and the audio design, where it just sounds.
I mean, and the creepy like music that comes in when you walk into the abandoned residential building,
Mm-hmm.
and the like almost like holy like music that pops up when you walk into the abandoned church, the sound church,
Mm-hmm.
and then the song that plays the sad F was it sad FM or whatever when you blast I think it is sad FM when you blast sad FM when you're on the boat heading over to the island at the end, almost at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. I didn't finish it, so I don't know. I don't know the audio. I mean the songs to it. I just know kind of the general landscape that was created in the first like 2 hours or so.
Yeah, but like each of those songs is picked explicitly for the areas that they play in,
Mm-hmm.
and is picked explicitly to reinforce the like this general theme that like associates with that zone.
Mm-hmm.
Something that Cyberpunk just doesn't really have in it at all. It just doesn't really do that.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that kind of storytelling problem where, they're talking about, they're trying to put together an experience where you can go and have this open world. And, if you're doing an open world experience with a lot of customization for your main character, that you can't have like a cohesive audio landscape or like a cohesive theming very well throughout the whole thing. And that really is a weakness of the form. I 100% agree. 100% agree.
Yeah, and I think on the other note that was mentioned just beforehand, the idea of that you are forced to buy into the whole accumulation of wealth into the capitalist model in the game, that you're forced to have to participate in it. That is true. You are given no real choice as a character to opt out of that. You can choose options to complain about it, but you still go ahead and do it for most of the missions in the game. The only time that you really end up being given like a real choice to not do that is in one of the endings for the game. Where one of the endings, and it's not about rejecting capitalism as much as it is rejecting Night City.
Oh, and interesting.
When you get to the end of the game, that's when you realize exactly why this isn't a cyberpunk game. It's only when I got to the end and I finally like got to like did one of the like what is described by most things as the good ending, as in the correct ending to choose.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when I got to the end of that I was like, oh shit, that's the theme. This is the theme of the game. This is what they were going for. I get it now. It's not cyberpunk. It's a noir game.
Oh,
They're making a noir game.
Interesting.
It's Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the end of the game is you can't win. You can't win. It's Chinatown. You give up.
Mm-hmm.
You either leave and you try and get away from as far as you can, or you stay here and you get stuck in and you just die to its many promises and its fake dreams and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like they weren't trying to make a game about capitalist dystopian corporations. They were trying to make a game about Night City, about the story of the city.
Mm-hmm.
But the city is fucking shit. It's not explored.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the game when your character starts dropping the lines talking about getting away from Night City, and they're talking about oh it's a fake dream, a fake promise. It promises a lot but never delivers, and you keep getting sucked into thinking maybe next time I'll do it, maybe next time I'll pull it off, and this will be the one time I'll get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you never get away with it. You also just get sucked more and more. I'm like, okay, this is why none of it worked.
Mm-hmm.
this is why none of the whole punk setting actually worked, was because they weren't doing a punk setting. They weren't doing cyberpunk. The story isn't a cyberpunk setting. It's a noir city setting, and they just painted it with cyberpunk colors.
That's
that was what I mean when I was I was like, okay, yeah, now this all makes sense now. This all clicks together finally, as to why none of this felt right.
Prevento just said cyber noir is bourgeois interpretation of cyberpunk. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Yeah, that's noir with cyberpunk characteristics. Yeah, that's an interesting take. I feel like that's really gonna open my eyes a bit more while I'm playing the game, because
thinking, finishing the story and having that realization, and then thinking back to everything that happened in the game,
mm-hmm.
I was like, that does kind of track. They aren't, especially because it makes sense in all the ways that your character doesn't really push back on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Your character doesn't and this isn't just it's the minor stuff, how the world is just has really bad opinions about sex workers, or has really bad opinions about the voodoo boys, the Haitian
mm-hmm.
black people, has really bad opinions about everything, and your character doesn't really have an opinion on them. It doesn't really push back on any of those opinions. It doesn't really do any of it doesn't really have their own sort of commentary on that kind of thing. And how anytime you try to change stuff, it just fails. Every time you try to do anything, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the whole story. It's not about, you're not about changing. It's not about having an impact. It's not about having a commentary on these elements. It's about how these elements come together to make up the impossible to escape and impossible to stop monstrosity that is Night City.
Yeah, you're not a hero. You're there as an observer, and like a cog and an observer at the same time.
Which, like I said, yet again, the more I think about them, I'm like, oh shit, they were that was clearly something they were working from the start. When you talked about when you look at Jackie,
mm-hmm.
right? Jackie's whole thing is, someday I'm going to be a legend. I'm going to be it. I'm going to make it. I'll be a legend, and then this whole town will be mine. Once I'm a legend, that's all I need to do. And then you're consistently told legends are people. Legends, most of them die young. Most of them die doing something stupid. Legends don't last. Legends are chewed up by the town, spat out, and or they get drinks named after them at the bar. But
yeah,
that's because they normally are dead. They have to be dead to get a drink named after them.
Mm-hmm.
And legends of Night City are people who are worshipped, but they're worshipped because ultimately they don't end up succeeding in having a long-term impact. Their whole epitome of the legend of Night City is that they don't change anything, that they don't change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so
they might try and do something big, but they are kind of oddly recuperated into the machinery of the city itself.
Yeah, and there's also a whole bigger discussion that could be had about the confusing element about engrams and stuff in the game, which is the constructs like Johnny and people you'll meet later on are engrams, i.e. they're not a person, they're a copied psyche that is designed to match that person as how they were when their brain was fried by Soul Killer.
Damn.
But what it does say is that, what they do say explicitly in the game, but they don't really talk about what the fuck that means, is that Soul Killer only manages to keep the psyche, it doesn't keep the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Which as soon as they said that, I was like, wait, hold it back. I was like, you can't just have someone say that and not tell me what the fuck that means. What do you mean they don't keep their soul? So wait, you just confirmed to me that like these like engineers and shit know that they've managed to like quantify what a soul is? Like
Uh-huh.
they can actually like they can specifically tell that there is a soul and that somehow they can't keep it by like transferring psyches across.
Mm-hmm.
Um and like um fuck, there's like some really good conversations that I'm not sure like exactly how much I can spoil.
I mean, I put the spoiler tag
The
on
spoilers on that. Okay.
if you want
So
to go for it.
near the end, one of the big things that happens is like the only way that you can actually like save your character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you have to be soul killered.
Oh.
So you have to. It's the only way that you can like split yours and Johnny's psyche, so that one of you can go back into your body, is to split you and Johnny into two separate engrams. So you get soul killered as well, and it's like, oh, so you can go back into your body now, or you can let Johnny go back into your body. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, hold up, you've just told me that getting engrammed means that technically your soul's being killed.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that the engram that goes back in my body doesn't have a soul anymore, and it's just a copy of my person? That I'm actually no longer playing the original V. That I'm just playing a copied, an engrammed psyche of V, who just has the memories of V.
And then what's the difference at that point, right?
Well, yeah, but then I'm like, if so, like, why does nobody talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like that's like mentioned, and then everyone just like walks past it. I'm like, hold up, how is everyone in this game just immediately skipping over that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is nobody focusing on what the fuck does any of that mean?
It's got
Like,
a similar vibe to like the matter transporters in Star Trek, where it's like, yeah, it kills you, but it goes and recreates you at the other spot. Except, and I mean, I guess in there they didn't talk about the implications of that either. But Jesus,
yeah, like it's a huge fucking plot point that's like a massive deal, and I'm just like, this is like a core fucking like element of the soul killer thing, which is like a core element of your game. I don't think you can just skip past this. Like this should like let you like have to talk about this. Like you should like in the game, if like that something like that comes up, you should be able to like go up to like someone and like, or like talk to like the person who designed the program, like Hellman. You should be able to talk to Hellman and be like, what the fuck does this mean? What do you mean it kills souls? How do you know what a soul is? What like is the person at the other end like still the same person, or are you saying that like they die and like whoever wakes up there isn't them anymore, but is them because it's like a copied version of them? What like this? You've got to explain some of this.
You got to go into this, and they're just like, nope, not gonna do it.
Literally there was no explanation of that concept at all from anybody in the game, and I was like, this is disappointing to say the least, that they would put something massively interesting like this into the game and then not explore it at all. Because it's, like I said, it's the same thing again where there's like missed opportunities. From like, holy shit, like this as a concept is hugely intriguing, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
And it's the same way like cyber psychos. So one of the things you do in the game is you go around for Regina Jones and you either capture or you kill cyber psychos. It's like a collection mission. You have to go to 17 of them. And eventually, like what most of them are revealed to be is that like most of them are people who are like exploited and abused by the system. And like that that sort of like ends up making them like snap, and they end up like to just like, and also like their implants and stuff end up making them go like mad or something. Which I mean, they use the base understanding of cyber psycho from Cyberpunk 2020, which was that the more implants somebody gets, the more their humanity slips away.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Is a little bit. I mean, you know, Brian Devil Gilbert talks a brief bit about that being really weird. Like the idea that if someone starts replaces their body parts, they lose their humanity. Which I mean, is kind of a little bit seems a little bit, ableist, but all right.
Hey, it's the 80s. Let's go. No. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a bit oof. It's a bit but it's it is what they put in the thing, so
yeah. Like one of the things that like 2077 is that like cyber psychos are like not a big problem anymore because they can be like through therapy and shit, they can be like helped back to like not being like crazy. So like your like job is to find out like why these cyber psychos have like keep popping up, and the whole thing kind of ends up being that like it's possible that like the company behind it or the treatment behind it isn't like working as well as it's meant to, and there's like, oh, maybe something like to do with that, but it never goes anywhere. You find out that like it's probably not good, or something's going wrong, but you don't find out why, and you don't ever fix it or go any deeper into it. So it's like, okay, cool, I can just figure out that then. And that was just mechanic. Yeah, it was originally just a mechanic to discourage people from cybering up to the max, but like it's the same kind of thing where if you put in mechanics like that, then that's on you for putting in those mechanics the way that you did.
Yeah,
because those mechanics have implications about the way things are in the world. That's on you.
Yeah, you know, people are going to look and people are going to speculate about what it means, and you know, that's something. It's like, I get it. You want to put in a mechanic. Like, if you want to, like, a lot of games put in mechanics just specifically to be like, hey, this is kind of a fourth wall breaker, but just don't pay too much attention to it. But like, if you're going to put like an in-game, in-lore kind of limiter on things, you know, you got to make it work, or else you got to make it work, and you got to make it like, you know, function. Like, yeah. You know what I mean?
Like, it is kind of like a weird sort of thing to insert in there, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, there's other sort of like weird stuff as well. I mean, also D&D 5e, you can only have 3 attuned magic items, sure, but also that's why you play Artificer, who can have up to like 9 by level 20. And also Artificers can replace missing body parts with mechanical parts that are magical.
And yeah, the Artificer is not weirdly ableist like humanity and in cyberpunk setting.
No, yeah, it's not at all. It's more like, you can make some awesome fucking construct shit. That's cool. Go for it. Go ham on making those cool construct things.
Yeah, you get to be really interesting. It's like, cool.
Like, hey, you've got like a cool badass mechanical arm. You want to jack that mechanical arm with a fucking laser blaster? Hell yeah. Let's do it.
Hell yeah.
But like it's kind of a there's a lot of stuff like that consistently, I think, with these like very interesting themes that get brought up, but they don't get discussed, or they don't get given enough real time or effort to let you explore what the hell that actually means, or what the context of that is within the cyberpunk world.
Yeah.
And this, I said, does kind of come into concept a little bit when we talk about I said, when I look at like the endings do kind of reinforce the fact that I do think the theme of the game is the theme I mentioned earlier on, the noir Chinatown setting of Night City. Like, the theme is Night City, which isn't really that well talked about during the game. Like, it's not really reinforced enough that like I was certain that was the whole point until I got to the end and was like, okay, these endings make me suspect that might be what the main theme is here. I'm pretty sure now I've got to the ending that this might be what it is.
So if you had to whittle it down to the general theme of the game, or at least like the conclusions of the game, would it be something like the only way to win is to not play? Something like that. It kind of feels like that's where it's at. I've just kind
of. So with the with the game. And this is the biggest possible spoilers here. Although I guess depending on how you end the game, it's going to change depending on what spoiler is. This is the biggest level of spoiler here. If you hate the idea of finding out what the ending of a game is, don't listen, I guess.
Spoilers. You got 5 seconds, okay, everybody?
Massive amounts of spoilers. So the 5 endings of the game, okay? Like I said, some of them are dependent upon you doing the right side character mission stuff, and the good ending to the game, i.e., the one that's explicitly most reviewers and most guides seem to think that it's the correct ending of it, is the Nomad Pan Am ending, which is where you call on I've completely forgotten what that the Nomad clan. You call upon them to come and help you break into Arasaka Tower to plug into Mikoshi. Mikoshi is the prison of souls, which is actually, it's not the prison of souls because they use Soul Killer to extract psyche, so it's actually more accurately the prison of psyches, but they call it prison of souls in the game. And your character just leans into it. But to break into Prison of Souls, so that you can access the Soul Killer program there, you can upload yourself into that, and then you can split between you and Johnny. Can split up on what you can choose to do, what the hell you're going to do with that, which is another comes into play with the endings. So that ending, you get Panam to help you do that. You break into the thing with an awesome fucking Basilisk hover tank, which is badass as shit, and probably one of the best things in the goddamn game. Which you steal from a Militech convoy, which is trying to transport it to South America to sell to a third world government. They still call it third world in the game. That's me quoting.
Interesting.
Still called third world.
Okay. Interesting that sticks around for another 100 years. Okay. Interesting prediction there, CDPR.
You rob the Militech convoy, and justification from the Nomads, which the Nomads are probably the most fleshed out group in the game. Aside from maybe Arasaka. Actually, no, they're more fleshed out than Arasaka. Which is why people are pretty certain that's meant to be the proper ending is them, because they're the ones that have the most effort put into discussing them. And you talk to those characters the most and get the most information out of them. You get a bunch of stuff like from them you find out that at some point America was at war with Mexico, and a bunch of the Nomads were effectively conscripted kids who were shoved into Basilisk tanks for 4 weeks at a time with nothing but themselves, the tank, and a bunch of food.
Child soldiers, let's go.
So you bust into this construction tunnel, you go down there, yada yada, it gets to the end, you lose a bunch of the Nomad people who end up dying because it's a suicide mission, yada yada. So you lose people, suicide mission, classic thing. Which, because by that point in the game you actually do kind of know those characters. Those character deaths do have a kind of an impact to them, because you're I know this, I know Saul, I know Mitch, I know all these people. They're all I've done missions with them. I know their backstories, and I've hung out with them. This is really sad. And then you get to the end, and you finally jack in. You get the option of 2 options, and this is the same 2 options regardless of who you go with when you get to the end of the game, which is that you can either you get told by Alt Cunningham, which is, Jesus Christ, this is, when you're explaining a game, you're holy shit.
And you got all these little pieces you got to bring together. Yeah.
But you talk to Alt Cunningham. Alt Cunningham is Johnny's girlfriend from 2016, who was originally killed by Soul Killer and uploaded to Mikoshi, which was used by Arasaka because she was a great net runner, and Arasaka used netrunner psyches to basically create a whole bunch of stuff and to run all their computer programs, because it was easier than it was easier to kill them and then abuse their psyches in a prison, a psyche in a prison cell, than it was to actually try and force them to work for them. It was easy to make them force to work for them if they stole their psyches, which doesn't get fucking explored by the goddamn game.
Of course not.
How messed up that is.
Yeah, that's dark as hell.
Johnny briefly mentions how it's it's pretty fucked up. You know why it's fucked up? Because the corporations, they're it's not even you anymore. I'm like, I don't care. It's not even you anymore, Johnny. That's not the big problem here. The big problem is that they literally have they have a psyche version of you that they can keep around to exploit for them forever, locked up in a prison forever, and they kill the real you, and they supposedly kill your soul too. So like, that's the bigger problem here, Johnny. You stupid fucking idiot. How are you missing that shit? I'm missing the biggest fucking thing. Like, that doesn't get discussed by anybody properly at all. But anyway, how Alt Cunningham uploads your thing to the thing and uploads your consciousness into Mikoshi. She's going to break down Mikoshi and absorb all the psyches in there into her personality, because she's an AI from beyond the Black Wall. The Black Wall is a wall on the net that was created by the networking company, which I think is just called Net Company or whatever.
It's a boring ass name, yeah.
Which the only reason that I know what the Black Wall is because very briefly, very, very briefly, some of the loading screens mention it. Mention what it is. There's not really much discussion in the game, but basically at some point, I don't remember exactly when, I don't think actually ever gets said, some dude called Bartmos, who was a communist, launched a huge viral attack destroying the network, destroying the original net.
Mm-hmm. A fucking communist. So
they had to build a new net. Is there any discussion about this dude anywhere? Is there any interesting tidbits of this guy? Like, do you ever find like any communists who like are like trying to redo what he did? No. he gets a brief fucking mention, and the Black Wall exists because of like him. Like, Black Wall exists, and the new net exists because he destroyed the old net, and that's it. That's all I fucking know about him. It's really stupid. But like, the Black Wall, beyond the Black Wall, is all like the rogue AIs and like crazy bandito net. Literal quote yet again.
Amazing.
But it's like the beyond. It's the net. It's beyond that is the net that Rach Bartmos is an anarchist hacker from the CP2020 era.
Oh.
You have now told me more than the game told me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Appreciate that.
That is more information than I ever got from the fucking game. Which is wild. There's a lot of CP2. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot of CP22 lore, but the thing is, the game doesn't explain it to me. So to find it out, I'd have to go, I presume, reading the fucking original CP22 book, or like looking it up on a wiki somewhere. Which kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Would be good if the game had it.
It doesn't really have much impact on like people in the game. Like, nobody really talks about Bartmos, which I find kind of crazy. I actually don't think a single character mentioned mentioned them as like an inspiration, or like mentioned their actions or anything, or like talked about like what they did or what. Which, as like someone who destroyed the original net, like, you'd think somebody out there, surely.
Yeah, somebody would have talked about it at least. Come on.
It would come up at least once.
They're still talking about a band called Samurai from fucking ages ago too, and it's like,
yeah.
Come on.
Anyway, Alt Cunningham is going to absorb all the psyches into them and is going to bounce back to the Black Wall with them. And your character asks like a little bit like, oh, this is kind of crazy. Like, aren't the psyches that you absorb going to just like become like, aren't you just like tearing them and like adding them to your collective like mind or something? She's like, oh, it's better than them being in a prison, isn't it? Like, this really isn't discussing what exactly you do to them though. Like, so do they lose their identities? Because these are psyches with identities. So like, do they stop being identities when they're absorbed by Alt? Do they end up like becoming confusing, not answered by the game at all? But your two options at that point are, and then Alt basically tells you, are like the chip that's been put into your like brain, the chip with Johnny on it has been in your head for too long, and it's irrevocably changed your body so that it recognizes Johnny as the real consciousness and not you anymore. So if you go back into your body, you'll have a limited amount of time to live, about 6 months, presumably. And so your big choice comes down to letting Johnny go back into your body and to live for a long time, and you go beyond the Black Wall with Alt and presumably become a rogue AI or be absorbed by her or something. Or you go back into your body and try to, within 6 months, find a way of saving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two options. Those, and regardless of which way you get to the end, those are the two options that come up once you get to Mikoshi. And Johnny basically tells you, go back to your body. I'll go be on the black wall. Like, you go be on the black wall. It'll change who you are, man. Like, you won't be the same you. I'm like, this is already confusing enough, buddy. Like, this is like way too much to throw at the players by the end of the game that hasn't been properly explored at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why it won't be the same me if I go beyond the black wall. Like, that's not really discussed. And like, fuck it, I don't know, man. So I like I said, but the proper ending is you go back into your body,
mm-hmm.
and then you run away with the nomads. You help them to bust out of Night City and to escape Night City. And that's where all the lines about like how like you have to get away from Night City. The Night City is the city that like keep trying to beat it. You keep thinking this will be it. This will be the one time that I'll be able to succeed, and I'll be able to actually I'll be able to finally make a name for myself and have security. But you can never have security. The only way to really win is to get away, is to run away with the nomads, is to get out of there.
Mm-hmm. And Prim, I'm about it. Let's go. I'm kidding. It's a joke, everybody.
I don't know if they're Anprim. I don't know what they're like. They're like
I know.
They're like tribal anarchists, kind of.
Yeah, they're just
they're honestly the most anarchist group in the game.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean that's usually the case, right? Like when you're talking about it, the groups that are usually portrayed in media as being the anarchist ones are the ones that are like, oh yeah, we got a motorcycle gang, we got a group of, I mean, I think maybe oh god, the Fallout New Vegas idea of like there's the two ideas of an anarchist. There's the Great Khans, kind of not really, it's like a pretty horizontal society that they're living in, but then there's also on the other hand like the like actual anarchists, and then so they put that in the game, which I'll give them fucking credit for that in New Vegas, that you still have the actual anarchists who are given a little stab in the ribs by saying that they're completely ineffectual, but hey, at least they're represented. Followers of the Apocalypse, by the way, everybody, is the classical anarchist group in Fallout New Vegas and the Fallout games generally. Yeah.
But yeah, so the, and you get like a credit scene, like regardless of what ending you pick, but like and we can also talk a little bit about how weird the romances are, because if you're a person who picked a female body, female voice type romance, you only get 2 possible romances. The first one is a person who will only date you if you are female body type, female voice, who is the supposedly textbook lesbian, who is obviously the one that I chose for my character because I'm not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They've also got some really, like, it's Judy Alvarez. She's got some really, really great side missions and stuff, because she's all about like trying to like work with the Moxes, who's a like feminist group who's trying to like save the dolls, who are the sex workers, who yet again, there's some very weird stuff about like the way dolls work, and that dolls are like sex workers where like they like have like a programming chip that like changes who they are to meet the client's demands, and like they don't remember anything that happens while that's going on, and like that is not explored like at all well by the Mox missions or the Judy Alvarez missions.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, it's not really discussed in depth about like how fucked up that is. But like the end of the Judy Alvarez stuff is that you find out that all of her attempts to try to make the lives of sex workers and the dolls' lives better has backfired, and they've ended up just like getting a bunch of them killed, and the whole district's been locked down, and they've all been like pushed out by like the gangs and stuff, the Tiger Claws, which are the stereotypical Asian Japanese gang. So like it's the same thing like yet again, where like she tried to make the game better. She tried to make Night City better by trying to help the sex workers, but nope, Night City doesn't let you. Nothing good happens in Night City. It always backfires on you, which is yet again feeding more into the idea that you can't win. It's Night City. It's Chinatown. Jake, you gotta let it go. um, which is kind of, it's a weird messed up thing. But yeah, she's got really really interesting like personal story stuff, and the whole like relationship between your character and hers does kind of like is pretty well done. So you know, props them on that one. And she flees with you with the nomads and stuff to get away from Night City, because of course getting away from Night City is the only way to really win.
Yeah. So Ross, I think yes, I would say that there's a lot of problematic shit in Cyberpunk, that it's like the reason that it is problematic though is that it was not dealt with. Right? Like they'll put something in the game, and they did put all these things in the game that are, that raise a lot of questions, that might be a way to talk about something, but then when afterwards they just go and say, well, we're not going to address any of that, which is ultimately a large part of the game's failing.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
The cops are also really weird in their game as well.
Yeah.
And that it's very confused about how it's trying to portray the cops. In general, like the context of a lot of like the missions that you do that are like related to cops, and like a lot of the like in-game like lore about cops and stuff is like, it's like 50% like the cops are incompetent, they're corrupt, they're messed up, and the other side is like, but they have to be because of how dangerous Night City is, like all the gangs, all the guns, all the like how messed up this place is. Like, of course they've got to be like these violent, as violent as the city is back to them, because otherwise how are they going to survive? Like, they're also against like corporations who like do half the job for them. Like, what are the cops meant to do, right? Like, it's not their fault, but like this is the way they have to operate.
Yeah.
And like, also there's a bunch of missions where you'll get to the end of the mission isn't a cop mission, and then you'll get to the end and it will like the little like mission finished for the NC for like Night City Police Department done. I'm like, wait, what? That was a cop mission? Like, what?
Yeah, what? Excuse me?
They didn't. That was a cop. Like, I had no interaction with the cops the entire time. I didn't realize it was a cop mission.
Also,
I wouldn't have fucking done it.
Also, Alice has a question. Why do you get street cred for helping cops in the game? I mean, I understand the joke here, but also, maybe the whole thing here is that in Night City, the cops are just another gang.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole street cred thing. Street cred isn't actually street cred. It's and this is going to be one of those things where saying it makes me sound stupid, because of course it does. But street cred is a better representation of how close your character is to being considered a Night City legend. The higher your street cred, the higher your Night City legend status is. Where at maximum street cred, if you finally get the 100%, you are a Night City legend thing pop up. Which, being a legend in the city just means that people know who you are, whether that's good or bad.
It just means but it doesn't mean you're dead, which is what it should mean, because that's like in the lore of the game.
Well, there is the Night City legend ending, which is another one of the endings, which is where if you let Johnny take control, and Johnny, and this is the help of Rogue, who is another living legend from the game, and she helps you break into Osaka Tower and plant a bomb again. Bomb number 2, break into Mikoshi. Then like that ending. Whereas the other ending with Panam was where you go with the nomads. This ending, you end up staying in Night City and you end up becoming a legend. And the whole end of the game is you doing one final last heist to really solidify yourself. But ultimately the heist ends up going tits up, because it always does, and you have to do another heist at some point, presumably. but like the eventual theme there is that your character will eventually die doing something really stupid, because that's the inevitability of them being a Night City Legend, is that there is no last heist. There's always another final mission. There's always another, last one more thing to do. Which, like I said, does seem to more and more try to work itself into the discussion that the main theme of the game is Night City is the theme. Is the theme is trying to be a legend. Is the main theme. And it's just very confusing, and you don't really notice that's the theme until the end of the game.
Yeah, not a very good theme if you only catch it at the very end of the game, sadly. But hey, they tried, I guess.
And then 2 of the endings just have nothing to do with that theme at all.
Oh, that's sad.
Actually, sorry, 3. One of the themes really does, which is one of the themes is like the most Night City Legend theme. Aside from like the Nomads one, which is getting out, and that's the solo assault secret ending, which is where if you have a high enough reputation with Johnny, and you've done all the side missions, and you're too indecisive, and you wait for 5 minutes before picking a selection about do you want to call Rogue, do you want to call Panam, what do you want to do, sort of thing. What you choose to do is Johnny convinces you that you should both just do a solo suicide mission on Arasaka Tower by yourself. And, if you survive the suicide mission, which isn't likely, you end up going into one of the normal endings. But if you succeed in the ending, and the succession of the ending is you getting killed, that's the ending. You doing a suicide mission and dying.
That's hilarious. I do appreciate they put that in the game, to be honest.
Oh, and also at the end, you can one of the fifth ending is that you can just shoot yourself in the head.
Oh.
To avoid doing the final missions at all.
You can just say fuck it. Damn.
If you're like, oh, this is not too hard, you can just fucking do it. You can just get a gun and shoot yourself in the head.
Damn. Wow.
That's like, and that is technically an ending as well in the game. It's an option to you.
It is. It is an ending you can take that ends to credits, I'm guessing.
And then the corporation ending is just weird and makes no sense, and doesn't make any sense of any of the themes. It's just confusing.
Amazing.
Where you work with the company and you help them to take down Yorinobu, who's the dude who you saw kill his father, Saburo Arasaki, which is a whole storyline that I personally didn't give 2 shits about.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's like separate from you. You're not involved in it at all. And your character even expresses like disdain at being involved. And it's just like, you just kind of get roped into it.
Like, why the fuck am I here?
Why do I care? And
like, I'm only here because I'm promised that like maybe you can help me out with my problem.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I give a shit about any of this. But you can like finally see that get wrapped up, and what happens is, and they drag you to a space station orbiting Earth.
What?
And they perform tests on you to see if they can try to, save you. But ultimately they end up saying, oh, we don't think we can fix this problem. Like, you've got 6 months left to live, so you can either choose to go back to Earth and try to live a life for 6 months on Earth, or you can choose to stay in the space station and hope that people can eventually fix you. So it's a shit ending, and it makes no sense. It's a bad ending. Don't work with the corporations. I mean, but not because corporations are bad or because you shouldn't work with the corporations, but because the ending is really boring.
Because it's just a boring ending. Mason.
Yeah, it's a very weird game that is confusing as all hell and doesn't really reward the player being involved with it that much. It's also weird that like a lot of the stuff is hidden behind optional missions, honestly. Like the stuff with like Panam and with Rogue feels like it shouldn't be like an optional mission, because if you don't do those, your game is going to be really shit.
Because they should have forced you. Yeah.
When you have to do both of those to get either of the other 2 endings. If you don't do those, you're basically stuck with the corporation ending, which is the worst one.
which is just shitty.
Well, like the game punishes you for not doing side missions.
I mean, I do kind of appreciate that as well.
It's
Punishing players for not doing side missions is a good thing. Fight me.
But it's side missions where it's side missions for characters who you wouldn't know are important unless you already knew how the endings worked.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's not like this is the thing that like confuses like when I like think about like in comparison to like other like RPGs like it, right? Where you have like very clear like people who are like obviously side characters who like have a big impact in life, like Dragon Age or Bioware, right? Like you have like your main characters, your main side characters who are like really important, and like you always want to do stuff for them because it's kind of a big, it's kind of an impact on the game kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these ones here, you have no idea that they're gonna have an impact on the game.
Yeah.
And there are so many side missions that it was so hard. Like if you were just guessing about which ones were probably going to matter for the game, you could probably guess the rogue stuff.
Yeah,
as
rogue
being like
seems
important.
Rogue seems obvious
Although,
to me. Mm-hmm.
Although that being said, you can, if you screw up some of the dialogue options, you can lock yourself out of being able to do those on accident without noticing.
Amazing.
So it is possible that you can completely fuck yourself up and not being able to get those if you just like screw up some dialogues with like Johnny, and then you'll never get to do any of like that stuff. So you completely miss out on that.
Amazing.
Also, like one of the other romance options for if you've got a female body type, your romance options are, like I said, the lesbian Judy Alvarez or the cop character, who I saw their mission. And I saw their mission line, and I went, not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not touching it.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just not doing the cop thing. Sorry.
I'm not gonna. You can't trick me into being a cop, CD Projekt Red. Sorry.
Like it's bad. It's goddamn bad enough that I'm stuck accidentally, occasionally fighting my characters siding with the cops, which made semi-sense, although not too much sense for my character, because my character was a corpo, but it's also so your backstory, like you get backstory character options in dialogue, right? But you can like choose a dialogue option that like links to one of your 3 backstories that you have. But my corpo backstory basically stuff was all my character expressing like either semi them expressing like their knowledge about corporation stuff, which was like, okay, that's fine, that makes sense. But the other half was them doing things in a corporation way. I was like, well, okay, well, hang on, like the corporation's completely fucked my character over. Like, why is there not an option here for me to be like my corporation's options, which are like me being super anti-corporation because of what happened to my character? In the same way that like with the street kid background, why isn't there like an option for you to be like super anti-cop with those street kid backgrounds? Because you get fucked over by the cops most of the time.
Yeah, true. It
just feels like the backstories yet again were another missed opportunity of they should have probably done a like 4 or 5 hour like backstory thing that has like a real impact on the game, because there's only 3 of them. Jesus fucking Christ, put some goddamn effort into them.
Yeah, I mean seriously, there are only 3. It's like, yeah, and they're kind of robust too. Like they could be robust. Like, hey, you've got the start out for Nomad, which is the only one I've done, is you are essentially just like quitting your gang, and I mean your gang may not exist anymore. It's not really clear in the beginning, but you just throw a patch on the ground and you're like, well, I guess I'm going to Night City to go and deliver a package. And you could go so many places with that. You could be talking about like, you could essentially be like, oh, well, we're gonna find my new gang in Night City or whatever. And it's like, oh, no.
Yeah, the backstories could have been a really long, really good thing, but in the end, they end up being like a 15-minute, very bland introduction to some ideas.
Yep.
To like the most basic concept of like what your character's like original backstory is, and it's like, this is really shit.
Yeah.
This really feels like I like haven't this hasn't been like an earned thing at all. Like, and this is the fucking thing. I don't. Cyberpunk got, not only did it get delayed so much, but also like it had crunch for so fucking long, and all of that came together, and my god, did that, like, that just not end up making a good game?
Yeah, just didn't
Holy
pan
fucking
out.
shit! Like, this is just it's yeah. Cyberpunk is another one of those games where when I think about it, all I can think of is missed opportunities.
Oh,
Like, there
100%.
are two kinds of games. There are games where you look at them and you go, "This is the best that it could be." And when I think about it, I think about how this game managed to achieve setting out and doing what it was intentionally meant to do. And that can be a good or a bad game that does that. There are bad games where you look at them and you go, even though this was a bad game, I still think this achieved what it was trying to do. Like, they didn't really, clearly there was like no like much deeper thought to this. They weren't really trying to do more with this. For example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I don't think there were missed opportunities. It's a bad game. I don't think there were missed opportunities. I just think that it's Assassin's Creed is a bad game.
Yeah, it just has some weak points because of the limitations placed on it by what it is.
Right? The story is confusing as all hell.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. I just,
it's confusing. It's weird, and it's just like. But I'm like, this is an expected level of bad here. I don't think that Ubisoft was aiming for higher.
Yeah,
I don't think they expected more from Ubisoft.
It's an Assassin's Creed game. It plays like an Assassin's Creed game. It's got all the hallmarks of every other, the new Assassin's Creed game after they changed forms. But yeah, that whole thing. All right, Lily, I was gonna start wrapping up. Do you have any final words about Cyberpunk 2077?
As far as the ranking, what Cyberpunk 2077 is, as far as like ranking goes, I would say that it's probably hovering around about the release of Mass Effect Andromeda. It's kind of reminds me of that game. It's sort of, I mean, they're both the same game.
Yeah, I could totally see where you're coming from on that. Where it's just,
I think they are almost exactly the same, buggy, messy, poorly put together, shit show that everyone expected to be a lot better than it ended up being. And it's just filled with missed opportunities, and will probably end up going nowhere.
Yeah, I think that's a really good read on how the game turned out. And maybe there'll be some like really big patching and maybe a DLC will fix it or something like that, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
I think even then it will be, it's one of those cases where they've missed the release thing, even if they've missed the release thing, and I think it's gonna be hard for people to overlook that as a problem. I mean, even when games end up doing well and coming back from the brink of like this thing, those games I don't think fucked up as bad as Cyberpunk 27 fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like 27 is one of the games that I think is fucked up the most by any company ever.
That's a lot, but yeah, maybe.
Okay, it's not on ET. It's not on ET the game levels where they killed a company.
Not yet.
This could kill CG. Actually, no. They made the full cost of the fucking production back in like 3 days. Like, they're fine economically.
Oh yeah.
Economically a success. Fucking everything else a complete nightmare. Look, just do yourself a favor. If you are thinking of playing Cyberpunk 2077, don't. If you want to play a really, really good RPG, play Disco Elysium. If you want to play a sci-fi game with awesome characters and roleplay and stuff, go back and play the Mass Effect trilogy.
If I need your
it's honestly better, and has a much deeper world that you can explore, and it's really, really fun. If you want to play a cool Cyberpunk game, go digging around indie stuff, because you're not going to find any mainstream AAA titles that do it. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. But yeah, just play Disco Elysium. Just go back and play Disco Elysium. It's a good game.
It's good. It's a good game.
Good game.
It really
is.
Just
a really, really good game.
Just so fucking good.
All right. Also, wait a year for fucking Baldur's Gate 3 to come out.
True.
It's gonna be good.
when it's
gonna
finished,
be a solid fucking game.
When it's finished, it's gonna be fucking awesome. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Larian Studios has a lot more trust in me than.
Yeah. Same, to be honest.
And the early access stuff is already kind of cementing to me that like they seem to have a good idea and a good direction.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem with their current right now is that all of your like half your party are just like edgelords who hate you.
My God, I know that is a big problem.
Which you're like, I feel like half the party doesn't want me here, and it's like, at least I've got you, Gale. You're my friend.
Yeah, Gale's
you
great.
like me, Gale.
Gale, you like me, right? Come on, let's party together, please.
Yeah, it's like, hell yeah, I'm like your only friend in this party, and like, thank God for that. Everyone else here is an asshole.
Yeah, seriously.
Everyone else here sucks.
Oh my God. All right. Well, Lily, thanks for coming and hanging out.
No worries.
Yeah, and
you've just listened to the 2-hour conversation. I'm gonna have to at some point condense down into a 30-minute video with some references and arguments and all that shit that will end up just getting me shat on by gamers again.
I mean, that's what the internet's for, is getting shit on by gamers. You'd think that that people in your position have a kink, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
It is what it is. It sucks. But that won't be on the trans channel, obviously, because I've already. There's nothing more I can talk about with trans stuff in Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I think I'm done on that topic. Actually, don't know what I'm doing next on the trans channel. Possibly, I've got some options. I'm either doing the talking about my gender journey, which is already half written, and it looks like it's going to be a maybe hour-long video, which I'm just not looking forward to because it's just so much effort to do.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm thinking of doing is doing a history of trans people in video games video.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Just talking specifically about like the way that like, I'm mostly talking about like, there's a lot of articles out there that like discuss like trans characters and shit, and like often like half the characters they include are like either cross-dressers or Birdo.
Yep, Birdo. Gotta love Birdo.
And, Birdo is one of those things where people argue like, oh, they're trans, but there's no confirmation that they're trans at all from anything. Birdo is not confirmed by Nintendo as being trans. They've specifically said that it is just a mistaken typing and that should be ignored. So is that like, this is transrepresentation where it's a case of mistaken typing has been taken as transrepresentation by the trans community or by people, but it's not actually representation within the game or anything like that. I'd just be I just sort of want to go through the entire history of the trans people in video games because it's kind of an interesting topic.
Totally.
It's a messy one. And hopefully that will yeah, I don't know. Fuck, I've got no idea where the channel's going at this point.
I mean, just go with the flow, I guess, maybe, or don't. I don't know.
If it's a trans-related topic, I can put it on Trans 101. Is basically the theme there.
Right.
And a bit of me is like, I'm worried that eventually I've shoehole myself in a way where I'm going to eventually run out of content, but also maybe I won't. But if I run out of content, then I'll just stop uploading and I'll go and get a real life. I'll just stop being a content creator on that day.
That'd be sad. I'd be sad. I like your content.
Eventually, you got to stop.
I mean, eventually you gotta leave Night City. It just keeps taking.
You're gonna leave YouTube City.
Amazing. All right. I'm posting Lily's links in chat. Yeah, they have 2 channels. It's PC Professor and Trans 101.
PC thing has been demoted to second channel because it's probably going to get less posting on it.
Yeah.
Because it's significantly I don't know, worse, but it's harder for me to think about topics for that one.
Yeah. I get that. And I'm gonna be signing off for tonight, everybody. But I got some parting words from Neo. I'm gonna put on screen, and I'll find someone to raid as I'm putting it on. So y'all have a great night. Take care of yourselves. Go follow Lily, of course, at both of those YouTube links, and also on Twitter. Lily Simpson on Twitter. I don't have that link handy. If you've got it, that'd be awesome. And check me out on Twitter. I have a YouTube channel as well, but it is sparsely populated at the moment.
I tweet better than Trash does, so
it's true. They really do. Most people do, to be honest.
My quality of tweeting dropped off significantly as soon as I got comfortably into 10k followers, because that's all I cared about was just getting that 10k. I was like, okay, cool. Now I can just stop trying to gain followers.
I made it. It doesn't matter anymore.
I made it. I made it to that 10k. That's sweet 10k.
That's sweet 10k.
I don't have to do anything anymore.
And also go check out that Discord as well, because we give updates on things. There's a channel where a lot of people post when they're going live on Twitch, and also people post their YouTube videos on here. So, it's just a good hub for finding things if you're looking for them. And I'm, thanks for coming through. And here's Neo.
If I need your body, I'll fucking dick. Why do you come?